back it up. Yes. Hello, welcome back to the Kelly Eden channel. We're gonna do an unboxing today. If you have never seen me before and the YouTube algorithm was kind enough to recommend my channel to you, hi, hello, welcome. I am Kelly Eden. I am a really big fan of Final Fantasy VII and most of all, Sephiroth. Do you like my Sephiroth shrine? Good, so do I. Still a work in progress, but you know, it's got all the good things in there. So Final Fantasy VII has always been my favorite game of all time. I first played it when I was 12 years old, and I remember paying for the game with nickels and dimes, and the cashier lady actually gave me an extra dollar in quarters from her own purse to help me pay for it. It just set me off in a new direction, and it just changed my life, and it's always been a really big love mark in my life. And by the time Kingdom Hearts came out a couple years later, we got another taste of Sephiroth with that secret boss sequence. And anyone who's played Kingdom Hearts and tried to fight Sephiroth, you guys know how challenging that boss fight is. And I remember it took me months and months and months to figure out how to beat him, and I beat him on Easter evening, and I was so proud of myself. I called Sam right away to tell her about it, and then I was pretty disappointed when you didn't get anything after the battle. No extra items, no experience points, no cutscenes, absolutely nothing. So it kind of added to the mysterious exclusivity of this character, and I'm really, really excited that after so many years, the remake is coming out. I originally saw this figure revealed for the first time at San Diego Comic-Con 2 years ago. I've always really loved the Kingdom Hearts adaptation of Sephiroth. I thought the design was absolutely beautiful. It was really cool and really unique. So I'm really excited to get this figure. I pre-ordered this what seems like maybe a year ago. Now that we're in the 2 to 3 month countdown of when the Final Fantasy remake comes out, I expect there's going to be a lot more merchandise coming out. It's a little bit different than what I remember. I didn't realize he comes with an extra head. So we'll take a look at the box first. It's pretty simple. Like, this is very Square Enix. You know, that they're very consistent with their packaging. So we have some filigree on the edges. They stuck with their basic palette of grays, whites, a little bit of red, but mostly like that slate gray, a little bit of black. They made his sword glowing purple, and I don't know if they realize it looks like a lightsaber. I'm actually curious what made them decide to do another form of the Kingdom Hearts style, especially in the same size. Let me get the previous form down. Alright, so I pulled down the original Kingdom Hearts Sephiroth figure that came out years and years and years ago, and it's a gorgeous figure. I love it. It's actually the first figure that I ever bought at an anime convention, and it's one of my favorites. But look at the detail on this. Like, it's perfect. It's really beautiful. Look at the nice flow of direction that they have in his hair, in his cape, in his wing. I love the paint job of the wing. Everything is just really nicely sculpted, really nicely detailed, painted. It's great. It's probably one of my most favorite figures of him, if not my favorite, because I think that there's something so unique about the structure of how they built him, and it's different than any of the previous ones we've seen before. It's a little bit more angular, it's a little bit sharper, you know, very a good representation of the Kingdom Hearts series. So now that we have this guy out for comparison, I'll just... So like I said, I pre-ordered this maybe a half a year to a year ago, and it ended up being $90 to $100, which I think is getting a little too expensive. Square Enix is coming out with a lot of different merchandise, whether it's figurines, statues, jewelry, things like that, but it is getting just way too pricey, and I don't support that decision because I just don't think that there's any reason that they need to do it. Some of their watches are like $2,000, and I just don't... So I'm not really happy with Square Enix inflating their prices for their merchandise, but I am glad that they're coming out with more. Oh geez, oh, nothing's taped together here. Okay, so we'll take the front off. Oh, gorgeous. Oh, he actually is pretty different than the other one. We have a head with, hold on, you're not even gonna believe this. So we have a different head, the kind of sleeping face that he does, and we have hair that's actually articulated in the back. You can see it up there. There's a little ball point right there, and you can actually, it's 2 layers of hair, and you can actually kind of shape his hair how you want it, and it actually fits really well. Like, it's kind of seamless with the way that they sculpted the hair and the way that they painted it. It has a little bit more of a metallic finish, which I'm not really a big fan of. You can actually see that on the previous one too. At the tip of his hair, it's a little bit more translucent and it has more of like a metallic quality. I actually don't like it when they use like translucent or metallic quality paints with his hair. I like it to be a little bit more matte, but here it really works because it kind of blends those two pieces together. This is a really clever way of allowing the buyer to kind of pose their figure in whatever unique shape or pose that they want. So I'm pretty impressed with that. So I've been noticing that Square Enix has gotten a lot more clever with their articulation, especially with Sephiroth figures. Like this guy right behind me, you can see his wing is articulated, so you can kind of shape it forward, back, or mid-flight, or like fully extended. With the wing in here, it looks like we have the same thing. It comes in 3 different pieces. Wow. Okay, so yeah, we're seeing the same thing with the articulation. So the articulation with the wing is a little weird because we see the cutoff right here, right? So you could only really kind of shape it that way to make it look real, or kind of bend it. Yeah, the articulation here is a little funky. Oh, okay, so it bends forward as well. Oh, that's pretty cool. So you'll have to forgive me, I'm using my iPhone to film this right now. Usually I have a camera that has a better quality with showing details. So I'm gonna hold up the wing here so you can see the paint job. Like, look at that gradient from that like midnight blue all the way down to that powder blue. So I'm gonna show the inside of the wing too, so you can see up on the main bone of the wing, you can see those kind of like tiny little tufts going into the actual structures of the feathers. That's really cool. So just for comparison, this is what they look like. So the old one, it's still pretty cool. The wing is really beautiful. All right, so the other piece of the wing is another base that's kind of like hugging around his shoulder. I also noticed that the paint that they used was matte, but it looks like they did a really light glaze of a gloss varnish across the top, so it gives the wings a little bit more of like that kind of shiny quality without being so like plasticky. And then with all their figures, they include a figure stand. So the new figure stand looks like this. I like the idea of their stand being fully articulated so you could kind of shape the figure any way you want. However, the base isn't strong enough to hold up the figure. So let's say I wanted to show this figure flying and I wanted to propel it forward a little bit. The base is just so flimsy that it falls over. This has been a consistent critique that I've given for any Play Arts Kai figures or Play Arts figures, is the stand just isn't so great, and I've had them break before, and so I usually just throw them away. So he comes with a set of 2 other hands, and I like that they come on a little stand like that. So these are pretty typical hand poses for Sephiroth, especially these guys right here, and then the other ones are just to hold his sword, which I'm not seeing in there. Oh, it's in the very back. Okay, we'll pull this guy out and get the sword out. Oh, he's very different. I did not imagine that he was going to be like way shorter than this guy. Okay, so the first thing that I notice is back here we have this little tuft of wing right here, and then a knob up here. That's where the articulation begins, so you can stick on the wing. It's being a little resistant to getting on there. All right, so standing next to each other, you can see the differences are pretty minimal. However, I will say off the bat, I already know that I like the older one better. This one, I do like that it's fully articulated, and the articulation is very, very smooth. You know, his hips are articulated, you can move it side to side. This one's a little bit more stiff. I love the paint job on this. I love the different textures. You can see his boots are glossy. His jacket is a semi-gloss. His pants are matte, and then his hair's metallic. His wing is matte with a varnish on top, so it's kind of glossy, kind of shiny, and then his shoulder pads are just that full gloss. So there's a really good range of textures here. The paint job is beautiful. However, I will say, I feel like they missed the mark on the paint job on his face, on his skin, to make it look a little bit more lifelike. On the previous figure, it is a little bit more flat, but we still have a little bit more of like a gradient over his lips to show that kind of like really beautiful bow shape that he has, that kind of like deadish quality. He's very like pale and pasty, so any type of color that they add to his skin really adds a lot to make it look a little bit more sinister. With this figure, he looks a little bit more like he's got that pink tone to his skin. He looks a little bit more like glowy. He looks like a good guy, kind of, right? I will say right off the bat, I'm not a fan of these smaller figures. I really love the bigger figures, like behind me, the Play Arts Kai figures. So I wish that they would have made the decision to make this figure a Play Arts Kai figure. It would have been a nice different variant from the original that we have here. There's just not too many differences between the two. Like, this one is a little bit more sleek. It's a little bit more of a mature design. This one is definitely like very anime, very representative of its time of when it came out. And we are in the final countdown of when the remake comes out. So like I said, we're gonna have a lot more figures coming out. I know they have another PlayArts Kai figure of Sephiroth for the remake, which is not that different than this guy back here, which is Advent Children. So even though they're coming out with more variants of these figures, there's really not a big difference to be noticed unless you're a big collector, right? Unless you really pay attention to these things. Overall, I think this is a gorgeous figure. I love the way it's sculpted. I love the details. I love the way that the cape is shaped. I love the articulation in the hair. I love the figure top to bottom. I just wish that they would have done a PlayArts Kai like 12-inch figure of this guy. I think that would have been really cool. Would have been great to hang on the other side of this guy. This is probably the least detailed Masumane that I've seen so far. So we have a basic silver coat, super shiny, and then down here we have the black and gray for the wrapping of the sword. Actually, there's a couple nicks on this guy. For comparison, I will take out, so this is the Masumane from the PlayArts Kai figure, which is right here. So you can see this one is super long. It has a little bit more of a curve. And look at the hilt right here. It's very, very detailed. You get a really good idea of what the sword actually looks like. This one is pretty basic. So holding those up just so you guys can see the difference. They're pretty similar, but again, for an avid collector, you can see some pretty big differences. I usually don't like to display my figures with the sword just because like this is a high traffic area for me. This is where I stream. So like every time I would stand up, I would get like a sword caught in my hair. You know what I mean? Ooh, that's actually really sharp. But it's really hard for me to be too critical of this figure because it is sculpted so well. Like the skill level involved in making this figure is just astounding. And I'm just kind of like in awe as I'm turning and looking at it and seeing all the little details. I don't even know if I have room for him up there, but we're gonna try. Let's see. Maybe he'll go right here. Well, thanks for watching this review. If you want to tell me I suck, you can do so in the comments. I do apologize that the camera quality isn't as great, so thanks for bearing with me until I get my new camera. I would love to know what you guys actually think about this figure in the comments, and if you guys want to talk about anything Final Fantasy VII or about the remake, let's do so in the comments. It's one of my favorite things to talk about. So until then, I'll see you guys next time. Bye-bye!